Did the boys behave themselves when they were in hospital?
Oh, some of them didn't. But I really think they were neglected. I had a ward full of them because I know the CO came down and he said he was going to make me one of his platoon commanders if there were so many in the ward. So
that's what mothers are for, aren't they?
Didn't have a mother up there, I was a mother. Rather than blaming the government, they seem to be blaming the troops.
So how did that actually happen, that you ended up getting posted to Vietnam?
I don't know how it happened that I got posted, but, you know, I was just told that I was going.
What was your reaction to that?
Don't know really. Was sort of unsure, probably was my first reaction. Because, you know, it was an unknown. Except I had been on exercises, you know, but it wasn't quite like that because the hospital was set up. Because it was a field ambulance it was, but they'd sort of built it into a hospital. It wasn't like going up there setting up tents and stuff like we did in the exercises.
What were you told about where you were going to be in Vietnam?
I knew the type of patients that they had because we'd had them come back to the hospital. So we knew, you know, about the mine injuries and the gunshot wounds and all that. We knew what they sort of... what the hospital itself was like, I really didn't know. I did know that they weren't under canvas. They had these Lysart huts.
Could you have said no?
Oh, I think, yes, you can. You can. When you go into the army, you sign whether you're willing to be sent overseas. They don't just send you off willy-nilly.
So did you have any excitement about going to Vietnam?
Yes, I did. It was excitement, and it was also a bit of sort of uneasiness about what we were going to.
And how did you get across to Vietnam?
We flew. We went from Sydney to Brisbane, and then we went to Manila in the Philippines, and we stayed overnight in Manila. We went by Qantas.
So from Manila you went to?
Saigon the next day, and then we were met by a couple of the doctors from the hospital. They sort of took us to our hotel, and then we got into our civvies then and went out. They took us out for a meal. Then we flew on to Vung Tau the next day.
What were your first impressions of Vung Tau?
Well, that wasn't, that was, we had to fly down to Vung Tau the next day and then to the hospital. And the actual town of Vung Tau, I didn't see that for a few days, but we landed at the hospital then. And the CO said that we should have a couple of days to settle in before we started. It was built amongst the sandhills, and the hospital itself was Lysart buildings, long, I suppose it's a top of aluminium, isn't it? And then all louvered windows right round it. Our quarters were wooden quarters which had been built. They were like a long hut divided into 5 bedrooms, I think, and a little sitting room on the end. And then we had a wash house come shower room, sort of another just built off it. The boys all were in tents. All the men were in tents. The mess itself was a tent. That was the officers' mess. Well, all the messes, you know, the sergeant's mess and the OR's mess, they were all tents. It was only the hospital that was the Lysart's.
What happened when you arrived?
I think we were taken first to meet the CO. And then we were shown where our quarters were. So.
How did you spend those couple of days while you were settling in?
Oh, well, we had to do our unpacking and all that, and then got taken into Vang Tau, we asked to, because there was no doors on there. There was a bit like a corridor like that, with the bedrooms going off. So we decided we needed something a bit, so we went into Vang Tau and we got those beaded curtains to hang up in our doors, and bought things that would make it just a bit better. There was a bed and a chest of drawers and we had a wardrobe, that was what the furniture consisted, and a chair each, I think. So we just wanted to make it a bit more homely, so we went into Vang Tau and bought stuff. And
Whereabouts did you go shopping?
in Vang Tau itself, in the shops that's the local town.
What happened when you started work? Did you ever approach the CEO and say that you're not getting enough support?
Yeah, but see, he used to have a staff meeting every week, which I went to, and all the officers went to.
Would you raise issues to be discussed at those meetings?
Yeah.
Do you think they're adequately heard?
No. And
would you perhaps be able to tell us some of the issues that you took to those meetings to discuss?
well, I'll tell you one thing, was one stage we were very short on cutlery. Well, actually, to some of the boys, I went down there one night and they're eating their tea with spatulas, wooden spatulas. And I said, where's it? We haven't got any. The staff used to bring their cutlery with them because it would get pinched, because it was easy to lose in the sand. And the same with the wards. And I think sometimes they took the cutlery to replace where they'd lost. I don't know, but it disappeared anyway. It used to disappear and we would be left. One day at one of the meetings I said asked about the cutlery. I said we needed cutlery. And at the next meeting I said we haven't got the cutlery yet. And the adjutant stood up and he said, Amy, I'm sick of you talking about cutlery. I don't want to hear that again. And the CEO never said a word. Never said a word.
What was your reaction?
Oh, what do you think?
I don't know, I wasn't there.
No. I was furious, but I couldn't do anything about it. And,
Did they not think that it was important for people to have cutlery to eat with?
well, I don't know. I think as long as we could manage somehow, they said they couldn't get it for a start.
Are the boys that you're referring to eating with the spatulas, are they...
They're the patients. Yeah, our patients.
You must have been appalled to see your patients eating like that.
I couldn't believe it. So that was one thing. And then there was no screens in the ward because the beds are all lined up there. I didn't think that was right. They should, because they used to strip them off to shave them if they had to go for an operation. And I said they should have a bit of privacy. They shouldn't have to have everybody seeing them or if they were having any treatment done, dressings or anything like that. They should be screened off. So I couldn't do it. So anyway, the CEO happened to be away one week when the senior medical officer from Saigon, the headquarters in Saigon, came down and he said to me, was there anything I wanted? I said, yes, I want screens in the ward, and he said, well, why haven't you got them? I said, because they won't give me any. So he went to the quartermaster and said he wanted screens to be in the ward by his next visit, or he'd want to know why. So anyway, we got a screen for each ward, when they made them so big and heavy that it took 2 men to shift them.
What other kinds of complaints did you raise?
A laundry unit was sent up to Vietnam when the field ambulance first went up there. instead of using that, they detached that to the American hospital, and our linen from our hospital was sent to the American hospital for washing. And it was a disgrace, the hospital linen. They did not remove blood stains. You know, it came back and they'd been boiled into it more or less, it looked like. And the linen was absolutely atrocious. So I said to the CEO about that, and he said, well, there's nothing we can do, you know, the Lord. I said, but the sheets and things that we have on air and come to us aren't like this. I said, they're come back quite clean. And he said, oh yeah, but we send them to the civilian laundry.
So you had patients sleeping in blood-stained linen?
Well, yeah. Well, the blood was gone, but the stains were still there.
Did you have any complaints from the patients?
Oh no, they didn't seem to. But it's not, you don't do that.
But you'd complain on their behalf?
Oh, yeah.
What did the adjutant think at your next meeting?
Oh, well, he went home the same time. No, he didn't. That's right, because when Colonel Watson came, he said to me, why haven't all the patients got proper cutlery? And I said, because I was told never to mention cutlery again. He never said a word, but the cutlery was in the ward that day.
Can you describe how the wounded soldiers were treated from their arrival and through the various wards?
Well, you mean the ones that come off the
helicopters?
Well, the ones that came in from the straight off the battlefield, they used to ring a bell when they knew they were coming. They used to get a wireless message to say they were coming. And then immediately there was a couple of orderlies down there and one of the doctors to meet them. And they brought them up into the triage area, and there they were, depending on how many were in it, because we didn't always know, you didn't always know what was coming, whether it was medical or surgical or what, but you always prepared for the worst so that they were there. And everybody that was around went down to everybody off duty anywhere, they went down ready to help if need be. If it turned out to be nothing much, well then the others went off. But when they rang that alarm to say that there was a casualty coming in, they went down there. So, and then they were taken in, you know, if you had 2 or 3, and they were sorted out. Generally the anaesthetist or somebody got, if they needed drips they were put in, and all that was done. And then the worst cases went first, or they priorities, you know, they sorted out the priorities, who was first, because they could only do two surgical cases in the theatre at a time, because we didn't have the staff to do more than that. If there was more than that, well, they went to the American, if they needed more, but usually there wasn't. They generally had it sorted out. If they thought there was too many for us, they took them to the 36th evac, which was the American hospital anyway. Otherwise, or if they were up country somewhere, you know, they went to the nearest American hospital. But, so then the theatre staff were in there, and then they had what surgery was required for the, and we had a little intensive care ward which had 6, I think it was 6 beds. They went from theatre to there, and we always had a sister in that ward too. One was always in theatre and one was always in the intensive care. The other one was either, you know, she and I would do the outside. Then, and then they decide, you know, they were treated in the intensive care until the medevac time, and then they decide who was to fly, because they took them from bunked out to Butterworth for a start, and then they used to rest up a few days at Butterworth. That was the Air Force Hospital, and then fly on then either to Sydney or Brisbane. So.
What were some of the more memorable patients that you treated while you were there?
Oh, golly. One was Jock Sutherland, who lost his, he lost an arm and a leg. He lost an arm, and he was one of the worst, one of the ones that, but that sort of sticks in my mind. Another one that sticks in my mind was one that was brought in dead, and he just had a bullet. I'll have to stop. Sorry.
That's okay.
Turn it. Do you want to go along?
It sounds to me surprising that they'd bring a man with that kind of wound in for treatment.
Oh, no, they'd brought them all there. There was no morgue. We didn't have a morgue, but they brought them in and then they'd take them to the morgue over at 36 of Vac.
Had he been fatally wounded?
Yes, he'd been shot through the... But that was the only thing that you could see. He'd just been shot. That was, in lots of ways more traumatic than some of the wounds you saw. So, yeah.
Not a pleasant thing to witness, I don't imagine.
No. And another one that was was this lad. His sergeant had been killed. He was wounded. He wasn't too badly wounded, but he was. And anyway, I was there when he was coming out of the anaesthetic, and he's going, the bastards, and he's carrying on. And a couple of days later, they brought in this Viet Cong that they had actually wounded him, he was quite badly hurt. And I think this boy sitting there, because they put him in the intensive care with this lad, and he said, oh, the poor bastard, I thought, isn't that typical? He was calling them bastards, and then when the enemy comes in, he says, the poor bastard.
So he was actually sympathising with him?
Yeah, because he was badly wounded.
What were the relationships like between the staff and the patients?
Oh, very good, yeah.
Did the boys behave themselves when they were in hospital?
Oh, some of them didn't. I can tell, I caught one lad spitting out the window one day, and I said to him, for that he had to go around and do an emu bomb. Which meant you go around and you pick up all the cigarette butts and stuff lying around the place. And later on, when I was going over the Horseshoe Bridge in Perth one day, this car pulled up and the heads, Sister, do you remember me? You made me do an emu bomb for spitting out the window. Never seen him again. I wouldn't have recognised him. So
he followed his orders?
Eh?
He followed his orders?
Yes, he did. Oh, yeah. He didn't think that, I'd been hard on him or anything. But...
Did the boys behave themselves with your nursing staff?
Well, yes. They were very good that way. I'm not going to... But...
Sorry, you're keeping something from me?
Yes, I am. But I don't want to say it. But I do know that there were problems, not with my nursing staff.
Which was the most neglected ward there?
The most neglected ward, in my opinion, was the VD ward, the venereal disease ward. But that improved too after. We didn't go there. The boys did all the. But I really think they were neglected.
Were there a lot of personnel in the VD ward?
They used to get them in, yes. Yeah. That's a part of war, isn't it?
Do you think it was neglected because it was looked upon as...
No, I don't think they sympathised with them too much. I don't know.
Can you tell me about the social occasions you went to New Adapt for?
Well, one was just first for us to see the area. The first time we went up there, and so that we knew where they were. And the next time was when 7 RAANC came home, and they invited us up for their farewell. Did we? Yeah.
What went on as part of the farewell?
Oh, I think it was just drinks in the mess, and we had a dinner. I've got somewhere or other I've got that invitation still here. And when we went up there the first time, we saw the boys going out when they were going out to operations. The helicopters come in and they would get aboard, and then they'd go off and the next one would come in and pick them up. So they went off like that, and then up to wherever they were going to be employed.
Did you meet up with any Americans along the way?
Oh, yeah.
What did you think of the Americans?
Oh, well, I wasn't... They were nice enough. We used to sometimes have little parties down in our flat too and invite them in. So, I know when Harold Holt died, we had arranged a Christmas party in our little sitting room. And then it was all cancelled because Harold Holt got it. So, I remember saying to one American, oh, it's off, we can't have our party because the Prime Minister's drowned himself. And he said, you shouldn't talk like that about your Prime Minister. It would be like our President.
How free were you to move about the hospital base area and also within Vung Tau?
Normally pretty free. You couldn't go into Vung Tau unless you could get a ride in. You had to have transport to go in there. But normally you could move freely about the camp and over to the various units, down to the beach, and they had the Bedco club down there where you could go and have a drink and that thing.
What was that like as a club?
Oh, it was quite nice, yeah. It was just, anybody could go there, not just the officers. It was all ranks went down there to the beach and that. The only time we were restricted in our movements was when the Tet Offensive was on.
What couldn't you do when the Tet Offensive was happening?
Well, you couldn't, you were supposed to stay in your camp. You couldn't go out unless you had escort. And we had to wear, instead of our war dresses, we had to wear jungle greens all the time. So we were in our pants and jackets and boots and gaiters and a lot. And we used to wear that on night duty after 5 o'clock too, because of the mosquito problem. But it was a bit amusing too, because they let you wear sleeveless frocks and things up if you were off duty. But
what were the mosquitoes like?
Oh, they could be quite bad. Yeah. But
how would you protect? You go.
Use mosquito repellent and make sure you took your anti-malarial drugs and things like that.
Did you have nets?
Yes, but yeah, yes, everybody, yeah, tuck in all round.
Were there any cases of malaria that would crop up?
Not amongst. Don't think there's anything amongst our lot, but there was quite a lot of malaria from the boys when they'd been out in the jungle. I had a ward full of them because I know the CO came down and he said he was going to make me one of his platoon commanders if there were so many in the ward. So most of them, they weren't all malaria. Most of them I don't think were ever diagnosed with what their problem was. They used to call them PUOs, which was pyrexia of unknown origin. They never actually diagnosed them.
Were there any other common diseases like that, where they'd come down with viruses?
No, not so much viruses. Malaria was probably the most common. They had scrub typhus. Some of them were quite sick too. Some we had to. I remember one boy, he was really ill, and we had to take him over to 36 back. And see, we didn't have air conditioning in our medical ward. The only air-conditioned area at that stage was the theatre and the little intensive care, and it was hard to get the medical cases into intensive care. But when afterwards the whole hospital was air-conditioned, all the wards, which was a big thing. That was after I was gone. But at that stage you used to have to sponge them down and all sorts to try and get the temperatures down, you know.
How did the climate make your work difficult?
Well, one of the worst things was the sand that blew. The wind would blow and the sand would blow in and get in the beds and in the everywhere. They used to get a lot of prickly heat. That's another nasty thing.
What is that?
And you come up with a rash. It's just caused through the heat and the sweat. I had that. It's horrible. But they're better off. Yeah, you want to scratch, you want to scratch and scratch. Vietnam's not, it has two distinct seasons, the wet and the dry.
Which one did you prefer?
The wet. Yeah. Running out and getting under the rain running off the roof to wash our hair when it was pouring down.
So that must have been quite difficult to cope with mud though.
No, we didn't have mud there really. They did in the jungle, because the boys used to come in from after they'd been out there, and they were caked in their feet and everything, caked in mud. We had cold showers, and I don't know, cold showers are nice, but they don't get you clean, do they? To have hot water, you had to have these bucket showers which they had, all the men had them, but I think they were being kind to us, and so gave us a shower with the water because we couldn't. And so we used to have cold showers, but I think that eventually they managed to get some sort of heating system, but not in my time.
What were the blokes generally like in the hospital? Were they blokes to be trusted, or?
Oh no, most of them were quite good, yeah. Sometimes you'd get them that they'd try and sneak alcohol in, you had to watch them too.
Really?
Yeah. They used to go down to the Badco Club and get it and come back through the sandhills, and you had to watch them with that.
Weren't you supposed to be drinking on the hospital premises?
They were allowed to have so much, but they'd go down and get a carton of it, you see. They were allowed to have so much beer, well, depending on what was wrong with them, but on the whole they were allowed to have a beer in the evening.
Did you ever feel that there was present danger around the base?
The only time was probably during that Tet offensive they had, but not that I ever felt that even the medical officers carried their pistols when they were on duty, because it wasn't like there was any bombing or anything. Not as far as the Viet Cong went. They were insurgents, you know, they crept into.
Did that ever happen, the VC creeping into the camp?
I don't think so. I never heard about it anyway, if it did. I don't think so.
Was it effectively guarded, do you think, your hospital?
Oh, I think so, yeah. But we were sort of in the middle of all these other units, and they would have had to come through them first.
That's what mothers are for, aren't they?
Didn't have a mother up there, I was a mother.
Did you get much opportunity to eat the Vietnamese cuisine?
Not a lot, but I did eat it. It was very good actually, and Vietnamese bread was lovely. Yeah, because I think they were taught to make bread by the French. They had lovely bread. Good.
Were there any Vietnamese actually working inside camp?
Yes, they did have them working inside. The ward's maid, she was a Vietnamese. They had one in each ward who washed up and swept the floors and did things like that.
Were there?
And we had a mama san, as we called her, down in our place who swept our and did our washings, washed our sheets and things, because we had a washing machine there to do that. And she used to wash our grey frocks, our ward frocks.
Was there ever?
She wanted us to bring her baby home.
Really? What happened?
She was going to have a baby, but she lost the poor baby. But I said, well, can't do that.
But what, she wanted you to take it because of better life, or?
Yeah. She didn't really speak much English, and we didn't speak Vietnamese, so it was mostly sign language and what.
What do you think was the best part about the time that you had at Vung Tau?
I don't know. That's a bit hard to say.
I'm just thinking, well, maybe, it was the people, maybe...
The what?
Maybe it was the people, maybe it was some of the experiences that you had. I'm trying to find some sort of a, positive experience, perhaps, that...
It was a positive experience in lots of ways. I mean, it wasn't quite an experience. Have I made it sound as if it was all...
No, I'm just trying to find sort of, something about it that you thought was really valuable experience for you, or something that you really enjoyed about your time in Vietnam.
Well, I suppose just having been there and seen it. And
well, how did your time end in Vietnam? Can you tell me about that?
When I went home, I was up there for 13 months. I was actually there a month longer than the normal. It was 12 months supposed to be, but because my replacement was I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning, we had to be out at the Vung Tau airport. And then we flew up to Saigon and had to hang around there and we went home in a charter, Qantas charter.
What was the atmosphere like here in Australia?
It wasn't very nice, no. It was, as if they blamed, rather than blaming the government, they seemed to be blaming the troops.
Did Denise ask you about post-traumatic stress disorder earlier?
No. I never really thought I had post-traumatic stress.
Why do you think that some of the staff suffered PTSD and others didn't?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Do you think that they were chosen carefully for their work in Vietnam?
No, I don't think they were always.
How do you think they might have been chosen differently?
Well, I think they should have looked at their history of how they cope with things. That's as far as the nursing. I won't say that about the girls that went with me, because I think they were quite. But I do know some that I think weren't exactly stable when they were sent up there.
What do you think about on Anzac Day?
Don't think about too much. I don't.
You don't think much? You don't think back about your experiences?
Eh?
You don't think about Vietnam at all?
No, not really. I think it's necessary for them. I think they've got to have that.
Is there anything that you'd like to pass on to younger people of today or tomorrow about war?
Well, I think that if we can prevent it, that's the main thing.